windows were broken. The openings had let the weather in, and now there were plants, even saplings, growing out through a few of the frames. 3 blocks before the Niagara River, she turned right. Her house was the 4th one in a row built so close together that it took skill to drive a modern car up the narrow driveway to her garage. First, she drove past the house, as she used to when she had lived here, so she could study the building from the street before she approached on foot. The house looked dark and quiet from this view, and that reassured her. She could see that beyond the front window of the house next door to hers, a reading lamp was on, and she could see the bluish glow of a television screen on the ceiling. That reassured her, too. The house belonged to old Jake Reinert, her father's friend since they'd been children. She was always glad to see that he was there and being borne along by his routines. She turned the corner and went around the block looking for cars that might have someone sitting in the driver's seat, for any kind of van or enclosed vehicle, particularly with tinted windows, for any vehicle with license plates that were obscured or made unreadable by plastic covers or mud, and for any vehicle that seemed to be paired with another, one at each end of a block, for instance. She also looked for a car with any aftermarket device, such as a spotlight or an antenna. What Jane had done when she'd lived here had been dangerous and illegal, too, so law enforcement vehicles would be as menacing as stolen ones. Because this was her old neighborhood and she still visited regularly, she was familiar with most of the cars parked on the streets. The only 2 she didn't recognize were an underpowered compact that neither a killer nor a cop would want, and a pickup truck with a soft front tire. Jane parked a few houses away between 2 big old sycamores instead of under them. In the early spring sometimes they self-amputated limbs, and she didn't want one hitting her car. As she passed Jake Reinert's house, she went up on the front porch and looked in the window. He was watching a cable news show and reading a magazine at the same time. She rang the doorbell and stood back from the door so he could see her through the peephole. The door opened, and Jake was smiling. "To what do I owe this honor, madam?" "I just happened to be passing by, peeping in the neighbors' windows, and saw you reading a magazine. Since you usually don't let my mail pile up, I figured it was probably mine." "Not this time," he said. He held it up, and she saw it had a family on a new boat roaring across a small lake. "Yeah," she said. "The women in my magazines usually have more clothes on." "I'll ignore the misplaced innuendo. Did you bring that quack you married with you?" "Not this time. He's working, or so he says, but I know he'll ask about you. Have you been doing okay?" "Still living the dream. I do have some mail for you, though." He went across the room and brought back a stack of envelopes held together by a rubber band. She took it. "Thanks, Jake. See you." "See you, Janie." She walked around to the back of her house, scanning the windows she passed to be sure none of them had been broken in an attempt to get in. She went up the back steps and unlocked the kitchen door, then opened it to go in. She stopped. The air smelled wrong. There was a faint scent. She quietly closed the door, set the mail on the counter beside her, and remained motionless as she teased her nose with the air for a few seconds. It was very subtle, but it was a floral aroma. Perfume smells didn't belong here. Even now, years after Jane had retired, she never wore perfume or used products that were scented, because an enemy could use the smell to detect her presence in the dark. She always carried a perfume bottle in her purse, but it contained concentrated juice of the roots of water hemlock plants, not perfume. What worried her most was that women and girls were not the only people who liked to smell good. The faintness and subtlety of the smell might mean she was detecting aftershave or a man's hair product. Jane stayed where she was. The person could have come and gone, but if someone was in the house with her now, he might have heard her unlock the door and be waiting for her to step into the open to attack her. She decided to outwait the enemy she imagined, to baffle his notion of how long a person standing in a dark room would do nothing. She had to be sure the other